I think the goal is really the time frame. It's not the actual qualifications of that person.
Yes, I would say, what is the meme that's going around with DEI? Didn't earn it, is what they're calling it for people who see it as ridiculous. And I'm one of those individuals because you run a corporation. You judge people, you hire people based on qualifications. If you are to, let me do it even easier. I think everybody has seen the footage from the Trump shooting, which we can get into. But when you have a body, a Secret Service agent who is 5'3", guarding a former president at 6'3", there's obviously an inequity there.
Welcome to Hot Takes, brought to you by 50cupstea.com, where united we sip, discuss, and learn. Join us as we dive into the hottest takes on culture, business trends, and the threads that bind us. Get ready for inspiring stories, candid conversations, and a fresh perspective on living a healthy, fulfilled life. Grab your cup and tune in. Let's get started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to 50 Cup Hot Takes. And sitting across from me is Mr. Jim Baker. He is a very successful author. He's a successful man. He's an entrepreneur, corporate guy who he knows his stuff. And Jim, it's always good to see you.
Yeah, you as well, Bill. Thanks for being my co-host.
Yeah, well, I'm excited, and thank you for wanting me to chime in. He asked if I might have an opinion occasion. I said I think I could come up with one. We had a lot going on, and we'll get into it this past week. But to just hit on some of the buzz topics that are not as serious as maybe some of the political news, but it does bug you. And I know you have one here, and I'd go right to the T, Jim, but I noticed that I'm searching for it right now.
Yeah, so on my own personal hot take right now, it's been a quasi-busy day, and I said to myself this morning, I need to make the tea. And of course, you can see by the barren table, there is no tea. Looking forward to having a little de-stress this afternoon, iced. Also, usually have my hat, that's here as well. And yeah. I thought that was in my car, but I think when I went to get it clean last time, the hat ended up on the shelf in the garage, and that's where it sits today. So we're going blind with our background, of course, which looks fantastic.
It does.
And
great.
Yeah, that's my hot take for the day.
Memory loss? Do you have any of that? The tea is wonderful, and by the way, it's easily available on the website. We get into all that as well.
In fact, if you want to go on our website, become part of our newsletter, we're happy to include you. And it seems like every time we do send a newsletter out, we get some orders, which is good. In fact, I fulfilled one this morning. So
terrific.
It's all good in tea world.
Well, you're a corporate guy, and it would seem to me, and I'm not, but it would seem to me one of the hot topics you have is Google search. Now, there's a corporation. Once you have a product, which is Google search, that becomes a vocabulary that is used by everybody around the world. That's pretty successful stuff, isn't it?
It is. And, in my world at 50 Cups and some of my client companies, we obviously spend a decent amount of money on SEO words, search engine optimization words that are keywords that when you're searching on Google, hopefully if you have the right words based on search criteria, you will come up on that first page, and hopefully you'll be closer to the top of the page that's below the ad content. And of course, Google also will open up their arms and invite you to spend as much money as possible in doing Google ads as well. And because of all that, they've been highly successful, obviously, and I think they control 75% or 80% of the search activity in the world. And it's pretty impressive. And in fact, you talk about a brand, you have this soft drink category, but before we had a proliferation of, multiple different types of soft drinks. I mean, you just refer to cola as Coke,
right,
or potentially Pepsi, right? Corn chips were Fritos, in back then. And I think Google, obviously, from a search criteria, it's Google. It's become a verb. I'm going to Google.
I can't tell you how many times someone says, well, just Google it.
Right.
Just Google it. And there's certainly plenty of other search engines out there. What's your beef with them? You got something that they bug you a little bit, Jim? Or
just from a client perspective, once you've decided on your keywords, the algorithms change, every few months or so. So then you constantly have to come up with new keywords. And obviously, if you're spending money out there on ads, you have to continue to pay money. And I get that it's a business, and I get that you have to pay to play, so to speak. But I mean, 2 months, 3 months. The other hot take is, if you look at Google as being one, Bing I think is two, and then you have DuckDuckGo and Yahoo and a bunch of other search engines. You don't necessarily get the same front page as other search engines with Google. And I think I researched that because I thought initially, especially in this hot political climate that we're in these days, that there was bias, within Google. But after, doing research on it, I think it has more to do with the economics, than it necessarily has to do with, whether or not they dislike or like a specific candidate, for example. So for this situation, obviously, because of the time frame, I put in Trump shooting, and, Google on the front page, there's videos that come up first, and, it's from various networks, CBS, et cetera. But there's a picture of, and a video of President Biden's messages from the Oval Office on Sunday night. But then if you go to DuckDuckGo, there is no Biden, for example, and it's more specific about, what they found so far on the Trump shooting and so on and so forth. So it's a little bit concerning to me that if I'm doing a benign research on, let's say, viruses in the U.S., what am I going to get if I go to Google, compared to what am I going to get, going someplace else? And we obviously saw some of that, through the whole 2 to 3 year, coronavirus vaccine, time frame within this country as well. So I don't say I feel better about it at this point in time, but it is a hot take in the sense of, if Google is our primary way to search and to get information, are we actually getting the real information that we're searching for? And I think the answer is we probably are if you go to page 2, 3, and 4, and 5 and really do your own research. But the majority of us in this fast, quick decision society, we may see one thing right up top, and we may pop that from Google and assume that's the truth, when in reality it just may not be.
I mean, that is such a true statement. And I know an awful lot of material that you would normally find on Google over a period of time just disappears. So unless you're really knowledgeable when you begin to search on a particular topic and you're trying to research to gather footnotes, it's very difficult, it seems to me, to find what you're looking for on Google. And that may be true of the other search engines as well. I mean, you have to be pretty well versed to do a search nowadays if your goal is to find correct, factual, unbiased information. I don't even know if it exists, to be honest with you, but it's tough, isn't it?
It's tough, and obviously they now, I'm sure, in their crawlers and in their spiders or whatever you want to call them, that are performing these searches. The artist, there's obviously every single search engine now, I think, has their own artificial intelligence, and as we know from AI, it's only as good as what is put into AI. So then, going back to what is the input? Is it bias from Google? Is it bias from Bing? Is it bias from DuckDuckGo? And if it is, because humans are putting the information in, then at the end of the day, I think the solution to my Google hot take is to not search exclusively on one search engine, but to look at different types of search engines and understand too that some of these search engines will contract Google to do the back end work. So you're using their criteria, you're using their systems.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So if you believe that you're on a search engine that is independent, you're still tied to Google.
But could be. Potentially, you'd have to look at that. And I think DuckDuckGo for a while was one of these search engines that basically they destroyed your data, so to speak. After you did a search, it didn't stay within the DuckDuckGo world. However, I think for a time there, they did contract out to Google. So then maybe DuckDuckGo didn't have it, but Google had it. I think 2 or 3 years ago, they decided they were going to be totally independent from Google at that point in time. So, and I'm not advocating any search engine over the other. I'm just simply telling you that, if you truly want to really understand what data you're actually looking at, you're better off using different types of search engines and understanding that, the big gorilla out there could be, fueling or could be the engine behind some of these other search engines.
I want to ask you from a business perspective, so many people have their own businesses, and you know what that's all about. You can be a big corporation, and you can afford a lot more than the small business guy, but everything is online now, and Google is a big part of that, or Bing or anybody else, in order to get a search to show up in the first few pages, because people are very impulsive. They see something, and I think they automatically attribute something at the top of the list as being better than something at the bottom of the list. That's just my own weird psychology perspective on it. You talk about algorithms and search words. Do you mind going into that just a little bit without getting, I don't want to get tedious and boring, but it sounds to me, if I heard you right, is in order to get to the top, you have to play the game with Google, and they change the game every few months. And I'm assuming this costs money as well.
Yeah, I mean, we could wreck this podcast if we could ask me to define what an algorithm actually does. But I think from a very simplistic standpoint,
Please make it simplistic. Yes, because I don't know what it
they're
does.
amalgamating the lots of data from everything, and then they're putting together, in effect, this algorithm that's going to get you to where you need to go as fast as possible based on certain keywords.
Okay.
All right. So, and those keywords cost money. So, for example, if I'm in the tea business, if I put in tea, chances are that's going to be more and more expensive word than, let's say, if I put in my detox tea, I put in detox, although that could be expensive because detox is a pretty popular word. But, at the end of the day.
So they're charging you on the word.
They charge you on the word.
Oh, wow.
Right. Then they charge you, obviously, to advertise as well. So a lot of times in the front page, the first 2 or 3 that come up that are on top, there'll be a little square on the left-hand side where the highlight is, and those are usually paid ads. And then as you scroll down, then you get more of the algorithm hit from that site that, is generating either the most popularity during that time or has the right keywords in place or whatever.
Well, needless to say, Google is a monster company. It influences everything. And I know people have talked about the upcoming election and past elections that Google plays a very big role in that and can tip one way or another. So it's a powerful thing. Do you want to move on to something a little easier to understand, at least for this small mind?
Why don't we stick with the technology piece of it and go to my super, super duper hot take, which is cookies.
Cookies. Oh, you want to go? Yes, let's do that. Now, I get an option sometimes to click on cookies or not. So do I take cookies or not take cookies? What do we?
So I would love for, I'm sure a listener, if we have any, will watch this at some point in time and they may be able to correct me on cookies. But what drives me absolutely crazy, and I think the EU passed this law first, probably 6 or 7 years ago, where they forced search companies basically to let the user know that, hey, we're tracking your content, we're tracking, your search criteria, and the guys, I think initially it might have been done to make it easier for you to get where you need to go based on previous searches. So, for example, if you love baseball and you're constantly, you want to find out what so-and-so box score looked like last night, and you punch in the person's name. Well, they know in the past you love the Yankees, for example, and you're always looking. So then they're going to be able to amalgamate all that stuff and keep it with you. It stays with you when you come on. They recognize your IP address, and bang, you get your information quicker. In theory,
right?
Well, in reality, that could be part of it, but they're also taking that data and they're selling it, to other companies that then can target you for a potential purchase at some point in time. Or who knows, this day and age, they could be targeting you for other reasons as well. If they don't like what you have to say, for example. So that, in theory, I think is what cookies are doing. I don't know why they call it cookie. I have no idea. It sounds cool. It sounds, doesn't sound nefarious. Sounds very
like
comforting.
Something you would want. It does.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So evidently, with this law passing, you have the ability every time you come to a new page, the cookie window pops up, and in my world, it blocks part of the page. And I, quite frankly, don't care to be notified of cookies. And sometimes it'll say accept all, or it might say manage cookies.
Yes.
Very rarely will it say accept or reject. But even when you hit the reject button, the thing kind of doesn't go away until you X out of the other box, of the box. That's on the top right-hand side. So it kind of stays with you. But then if you go to manage, once you hit that manage button, you could be in a whole different world at that point in time.
I have been afraid to hit that other, because I have, and you're right, it is a completely different world. And I'm afraid that if I hit the wrong thing, goodbye computer. I know, but the cookies themselves are irritating as all get out when you're trying to do something, especially if you're trying to get information or whatever, and you have to deal with this. Now, there is that adware that you can add to it that block those cookies, but I find that can work, but oftentimes it just delays the process of getting to where you want to go.
Yeah, and also potentially blocks other pop-ups that you might need. So if I'm online banking, for example, and I want to go to bill pay, well, now the bill pay box won't pop up, right?
Oh, right, sure.
So now, in some cases, not all, but it then can disrupt, the rest of your session, for example. So then now what do you do? Well, now I got to go open up the pop-up again so I can actually pay a bill to keep my vendors happy. But now I'm back in cookie world. So what I would love to see is Google, all of them, simply say, you sign on, and the first time you go on, you say yes or no to all cookies. And then after that, no matter what I do during that session, I'm not dealing with any cookie pop-ups, during that process.
That's revenue, isn't it?
I don't know. I did some research. I never got to the point where, there was any monetary gain from, the cookie thing. Well, it's revenue in the sense of, yes, if you accept all the cookies, or if you just do nothing, it should just dissolve in 3 seconds, which basically you're agreeing to having cookies hang out with you.
Right. But a lot of these cookies hang around for a long, long time. And I'm always amazed at how quickly they determine what I need. Sometimes it's just the spoken word in the room, and it's crazy. And all of a sudden, those cookies about that particular product will start showing up. It's really kind of scary stuff. But what did you do? Did they do something to protect the consumer, or?
No, well, I think they were the first to make sure that cookie box showed up. So
to notify you.
And then, of course, over here in the States, because we always try to be like Europe for some reason, we decided we're going to do the same thing a couple of years ago. So now, no matter where you go and what you do, the old cookie box is popping up.
It's amazing. And the amount of information that's garnered from that is where a lot of these search engines and companies make a lot of money as well. And of course, it's why you're a popular guy, even if you're a hermit, right? Because you'll never be alone as long as you have cookies.
Yeah. So if somebody's got a simple way to get rid of cookies when I'm out there on the web, I'm happy to listen to you. So send me an email or do whatever you need to do. Hit my website, send me an email, and I'm all ears.
No, please pass it along. Absolutely.
It's an extremely hot take right now.
It is.
Here's a hot take on some 50 Cups tea.
A few benefits of Earl Grey tea is that it aids in digestion and weight loss. In addition to this, it also contains polyphenol antioxidants, which removes the plaque in your heart, improving overall heart health and the health of arteries. And not only does it improve heart health, but its low amounts of caffeine give you the energy you need without spiking overall blood sugar.
Visit 50cupstea.com to find out more.
The elusive sea turtle is on my mind, Jim. I don't know why, but I want to know why it's on your mind.
Sure. So every year, usually this time of year, we'll take a beach vacation, and we go to Ocean Isle Beach in North Carolina. And over the years, there are sea turtle nests that I guess at some point in time in this late spring, maybe May timeframe, the sea turtle will come out of the ocean at night. They'll burrow into the dune somewhere, and she'll lay her eggs, and then she'll go back into the ocean, and she goes on, and who knows what happens after that. And I think this has been happening for probably 4 million years, or for how long turtles have been around in this world. Right. And in our community, we have basically, I'll call them the Sea Turtle Brigade. And they basically will locate a nest, and they'll fence it off, and there'll be a little pink tape on it and everything else. And that's code for
stay away.
Kids, adults, everybody stay away from the sea turtle world. And then they'll patrol the beach, and they're given these tractors, basically these gators, and they get to ride on them with their shirts and everything else. And I'm thinking to myself, who's funding these guys? So I'm sure it's all private donations, maybe with the exception of some public funding from the local town. But they're an army of people, and they're very into the sea turtles. And from May timeframe, I guess, until late July, maybe early August, that's usually when the sea turtles hatch.
Okay.
All right. So as we're getting closer to the time of hatching, the Sea Turtle Brigade will bring their chairs, and they'll basically set up shop and monitor the nest all day long, usually late afternoon, evening. For whatever reason, the sea turtles like to be born at night, but they will monitor that. And as it's getting closer and closer, based on what they know, they will then create a path for the sea turtles to go from the dune, which is elevated, down into the water. So they have this broom, and they basically, it looks like they're curling, the Olympic sport, but they basically make a nice, beautiful path, and then they rope it all off. So now in high tide, for example,
You can't walk through the
right, you
path?
got to go drown yourself in the water to go around.
Are you kidding me?
To get back onto the beach.
I had no idea.
Right. Yes. So I get the fact that we want to protect the sea turtle, because I did see a hatch. Usually there's 10 or 15 sea turtles that come out, but unfortunately, as with anything in this world, the sea turtle egg is a delicacy for an animal.
Absolutely.
That animal is a fox in this case. And yes, most communities at the beach have these wild foxes. Now, I've seen a couple foxes early morning. They are not well fed. They are very thin foxes. They look nothing like you might see a fox, let's say, in the mountains or something like that. So these cats, I don't know if they're cats in a literal sense, but these animals are looking for food. So I'm thinking if you take the eggs away, because you're protecting them now, then what about the foxes? Well, the foxes die off, right? Because the foxes need to eat.
Of course.
And if they're, knocking out sea turtle eggs, and they can't get the sea turtle eggs, they might have to maybe knock out a tiny little crab, which might not be enough nutrition for them. So we're kind of disrupting the ecosystem in a way.
Yes, we are.
All right. That's number one. Number two, as we all know, and I asked the sea turtle people this, if there's a hatch, let's say, of 10, how many sea turtles in that 10 actually survive once they hit the water?
That's a great question. What was their answer?
Maybe one, maybe two.
That's pretty
so
low.
We're doing all this work for 10 to get to the water, where basically 8, maybe 9 are going to be
Eaten or died.
eaten within probably a day or so, maybe even less, of just going through the surf.
Well, Jim, I'm not a smart
So
man.
that's
but
number 2. 3,
Yes.
assuming that the sea turtle will continue to be around for a long time, as it has been for thousands, millions of years at this point, then why mess with evolution? Why mess with the process?
Right.
Let the sea turtle do the sea turtle thing. And if this beach becomes too crowded, they'll find another place that maybe might be less crowded. I don't know, but I think they're cute. They're great. I'm not against sea turtles, but I'm just thinking this hot take of these resources and these people, focusing on these sea turtles, when at the end of the day, once they get into the water, the Sea Turtle Brigade can't do anything for them anymore. And then again, as I said earlier, there's an ecosystem. So what about the foxes? What about other predators that might eat the eggs? Like, what happens to them at the end of the day if you protect, the sea turtle that unfortunately is going to be swallowed up in the water for the most part at some point in time
I do not mean to laugh at this, because I understand. I've seen a live sea turtle out at sea. They're beautiful. I have not been privileged to be at the beach. However, I have a pond, and we have painted turtles that do the exact same thing as the sea turtles. But you make an excellent point. I would think that they adapt to their environment, and if the beach would become too crowded, that sea turtles, over the millions of years they've been here, have adapted in the past. They will adapt again. But we don't adapt, do we, Jim, as human beings? We tend to grab hold of in this case, it's hard not to like a sea turtle. If it were an uglier creature, maybe the people would listen a little more clear on this. But you see it changing? I don't see it changing. They're going to continue to disrupt the life of human beings in the hopes of protecting one or two sea turtles.
Yes, exactly. And
there's the hot take.
Yeah, and if you're worried about the climate, for example, you don't have an electric Jeep basically on the beach. You got a gas-powered Gator, Jeep, or whatever. These people are riding around all day long like they're, the Coast Guard. And,
where do they get the authority to do this? I mean, do they have badges?
I mean, it's all for good, right? So so if you're a kid on vacation and you get to see a sea turtle hatch, that's great, right? But I keep going back to if we didn't have a sea turtle patrol and the sea turtle scurried up under the beach at night while everybody's asleep, lays her eggs, scurries back, she buries the eggs pretty deep, nobody would even know the eggs are there.
Right.
Because you're not allowed to be on the dunes, and most people absolutely respect that. So the sea turtle already knows where to lay the eggs, where they, for the most part, can be protected. Now, what they can't control, obviously, is the fox coming by.
Right.
And my guess is since we still have sea turtles in this world, there's not enough foxes that are eating the eggs. So at some point, this whole thing works.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering what the difference is that the sea turtle people are making that nature couldn't handle itself.
That is an excellent point. It really is, Jim, an excellent point. In fact, one could say that in the long run, they may be doing harm rather than good, because certainly they can't guarantee they've found all the nests, and they may be going over with their gator on their way to the nest they protected and destroyed. It's so indicative of, it's so indicative of what we do today in this country and around the world, whereas as you get more people involved, and especially when government gets involved, they want to do good, their heart's in the right place, but it just seems like as hard as they try, ultimately they do more harm. And this sounds like a great example.
So I'll leave you with this.
Okay.
So a couple of years ago, there was a nest near our walkway that goes down to the beach, and they hatched around, 8:45 at night. So we saw, unfortunately, there was only 4, and we watched these little guys, scurry, 30 yards to the water. And the sea turtle people had their arms up like the human gate shield. And anyhow, it was all well and good. It was over.
Yeah.
So we go back to the house, and I have an outdoor shower. And so I'm taking a shower, and I kind of hear this noise, like in the background. I'm like, it's weird, because I know my wife was in the house.
Right.
And so finish up, come outside, and there's a sea patrol woman standing like at the top of my stairs. She scared the heck out of me. Initially, I'm like, can I help you? She goes, yes. I was wondering if you could do me a favor. And I said, sure. What is it? And then she apologized. I'm sorry for being on your deck, but you left your spotlight on outside. Now I needed the spotlight so I could see where I was going to go downstairs to take the shower.
Yes.
I don't really feel like, falling down the steps.
Yeah, perfectly legitimate reason.
And I said, sure, I'm going inside in a sec. I'll be happy to turn it off. And she goes, I would appreciate that because it's very distracting to the sea turtles.
Oh, I can imagine.
But I wanted to say the following. If the sea turtle is already in the water.
Can you say it over the air?
If the sea turtle is already in the water, then the sea turtles are not going to see the light, number one, because it hatched. Number two, if they're still in the sand, encased in a shell, the egg, they're not going to see the light. Mm-hmm. Mama sea turtle isn't anywhere to be found. She's probably in Spain swimming around the coast over there at this point in time.
That's correct.
So I never asked her, but I just kind of resonated with me. Well, what about the light is bothering the actual turtle, or is it bothering you, the sea patrol person? And that is the question of the ages.
I think I know the answer to that one. I will say to you, and then we can wrap this up. I remember as a young boy watching the nature programs, and they would have an occasional show on the sea turtles, and those I can't say the word, but they would film this. Poor sea turtles, these little babies, for their life, they were going for the ocean. and filming the gulls coming down from above. And I don't know out of the how many hash if one even made it. But I mean, the point is, doing nothing seems to have the same result as all of this effort and money involved.
Yeah. I mean, listen, God created this world and everything is in a system and it works. And I think when we get in the way sometimes in the guise of helping or doing good, I get it if you're going to individually try to, save a horse, let's say that broke its leg, but to try to save the entire horse population, I'm using horses as a bad example because I don't think there's too many predators for horses, but, you can disrupt the system if you take, an opportunity for food, in this case, for another species that what happens to them?
That's right. One of the things that happened quite frequently, and I come from Wisconsin, is the white-tailed deer population. Everybody was against shooting them because, well, they're Bambi. And, of course, that went on for a while until the population grew. And then, of course, instead of dying a quick death and being someone's food, they all starved to death, a miserable death. So your point is well taken. I think you're spot on.
That's great. And 99% of the non-human species out there will die a miserable death. They usually get eaten, which can be extremely painful until you're dead.
Yes.
Or you starve to death.
Yep.
Or you fall over a cliff or whatever it is. Like we're not dying. These species aren't dying peacefully.
No, they're not. Well, this one has got me confounded. But I completely know why you want to talk about it. Maybe we can help clear the air a little bit and help folks out. And when we, Jim, it's the 21st century, man. It's the 21st century. I thought I had pronouns down. I went to school. I did all right. I didn't get A's, but I did all right. I didn't think I would be confused by pronouns, and here I am.
Yeah. So another hot take is pronouns, not in the sense of, people. Well, two stories. One, I bought a coffee shop a couple of years ago. And so we bought it from this other owner. He wanted to introduce us to his staff. So myself and my partner come in, and I had bought other companies in my previous life. And so I figured I had this down to a T. Everything was going to be great. And they're going to love me. I got a copy of my book.
What's not to love?
What I didn't know at the time is not all, some of the people that work in coffee shops just love working in coffee shops. They don't want to, become CEOs of companies at some point in time or whatever, which is totally fine.
Sure.
But I didn't understand that concept. I also don't understand what's really important to some people. So after we did the intros and we talked a little bit about telling them that there's not going to be any changes, going forward. Mike, the previous owner, loves the staff. We're going to keep the staff, et cetera, et cetera. I said, does anybody have any questions? And this one female said, yes, I just want to let you know that I want to be referred to as they or them, and not he, she, or her. I'm like, wow, it's the first thing out of your mouth after meeting me. So
sure. How'd you react?
Thought it was ridiculous, right? Thought you're a female, you're a female. You're not. She's not transitioning. She's not doing anything. She's a female. And so then as that settled down, and then over time, I've noticed on LinkedIn that, people that are now using pronouns, like you might be on LinkedIn, but in parentheses, you'll have he and him. So you're validating that you're a male, right? You're not saying they or anything else. The same on the female side. So I'm like, well, when you request to follow me, for example, do I want to follow you back? I'm not sure, because you're in effect telling me, even though you're not identifying other than what you actually are, that you believe in pronouns still. However, I learned that I was wrong.
You were wrong. That seldom happens.
It's amazing, but I learned that I was wrong.
All right.
So then talked to a couple of people that they're big corporations, through their employment agreements, request that they put the pronouns in their profiles.
So it's not by choice.
It's not by choice.
Yes.
It's by corporate directive from the DEI.
Oh, my.
policies that they have in place. So I
Gotcha.
said, well, why would they do that? And he goes, well, because let's say we meet and we have 100 people in a meeting. And let's say that one person out of that 100 identifies with pronouns and they're adamant about it. That the company thinks that it's much easier if we all identify as pronouns, so that person then won't stand out in this meeting. So I said, well, do you guys have pronoun meetings or do you have meetings about selling product? And he goes, well, no, they're about selling product. I said, so then if I'm that one individual that's pronouncing, so to speak, why would I care that nobody else is pronouncing? And vice versa. Why would the company care that one person's pronouncing if the topic isn't?
Widgets.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm selling widgets today.
He goes, because it's all about this inclusive thing, and we don't want that person to feel uncomfortable, unsafe, whatever those buzzwords are these days.
But Jim, you're redefining reality. And surely that must bother you. I'm not saying that if you want to be a considered individual one-on-one, but you're redefining reality and the language. Isn't that problematic?
Well, I guess my issue is we have to absolutely protect those that need help, in our society. But it seems like we cater to the minority as opposed to the majority. And I'm not talking about race in this case. I'm talking about, if one person, for example, in that room, is adamant and has to identify with pronouns, then why does the other 99 have to do it? If we're on a plane, for example, and my nephew, by the way, has a peanut allergy, and I know that they can be difficult for people,
yes.
lethal. But if there's 200 people on a plane and one person has a peanut allergy, the other 199 of us now have to starve to death. We can't get any peanuts. Right? Why? Like, why can't that family somehow protect that individual? So it then spills over to what we talked about earlier, this whole DEI thing, which then I think puts people into boxes, puts people into identification, where you and I think when we went to school, we were taught that there is no difference, in skin color. We were taught that we were all equal. We were taught to treat everybody with respect. And now, we're having to identify, and we're taking one particular race in this case and sex, male, white, and blaming the majority of issues that those people born now had nothing to do with, hundreds of years ago, right? So then what does it do? It creates this resentment. And then I think it also, from a DEI standpoint, ends up, and let's talk about the shooting this weekend. The main directive that the Secret Service director has by 2030 is this 30-30 goal of 30% of the agents are going to be female, and it's going to be done by 2030, right? So
regardless of which is what DEI is, it's not.
Now we'll give the Secret Service credit. I'm sure they're going to try to find the most qualified of that 30%.
Didn't appear that way on the videos recently.
Well, hold on. But is the goal more the second 30, get there by 2030, or is the goal, let's get 30% wildly qualified people, females in this case, but if it happens to be 2035 or 2040, then I'm okay with that. And I think, to your point, I think the goal is really the time frame. It's not the actual qualifications of that person.
Yes, I would say, what is the meme that's going around with DEI? Didn't earn it, is what they're calling it for people who see it as ridiculous. And I'm one of those individuals because you run a corporation. You judge people, you hire people based on qualifications. If you are to, let me do it even easier. I think everybody has seen the footage from the Trump shooting, which we can get into. But when you have a body, a Secret Service agent who is 5'3", guarding a former president at 6'3", there's obviously an inequity there. And now we're dealing with a life and death situation. You've had, was it United? One of the airlines said we're going to have
Yeah, United.
Equity versus qualifications. Well, it seems to me that that's very harmful. A lot of people could die or get hurt.
Same in the municipalities with firefighters and police,
Yes.
et cetera, et cetera. But to your
Yes.
point, and by the way, it has nothing to do with, for Trump's situation, it has nothing to do with females. If I saw a male that was 5'3" trying to protect the president, I would literally say he needs to go.
It was the job of that Secret Service agent to use her body, in this case, to protect the president, to take the bullet, which is extremely courageous. Tough to do when he's a head taller than you.
Correct.
Okay.
And I think putting the hand up isn't probably going to do it.
No.
And, again, it goes back to, it's a slippery slope. So, through DEI, now you have these hiring requirements. I think all of us want to get on a plane. We want it to take off on time, hopefully. And we want it to land on time, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
But most importantly, we want to have a safe flight. And I don't care how automated the controls are and the software of an airline. At the end of the day, something could go wrong, and then how does that person react if don't have the proper qualifications and the proper training to respond?
It's the overall philosophy, I think, Jim, at least the way I grew up, was that you work very, very hard. You try to be the best of the best. And if you are, you're rewarded for that in this country. The folks now, and it's a very progressive group of people who feel that that's not equitable and that there should be some equity, and you could be dumb as a rock. And if you happen to fit in the certain categories, they elevate you to a position you're surely not qualified for. And you're right, whether it's a pilot, whether it's a surgeon, it's invading the medical world as well. I mean, it impacts even in the emergency room now. I mean, it's crazy stuff. Same with the pronouns. There is a reality. There is a science. You can't change that. And I don't know, I get a sense that if we incorporate that, even though they say it's out of kindness that you do that, it's really beyond that, where they're forcing you to do that. And that's lying, It's just lying. And we shouldn't condone that. That's just my position on it. And maybe it's unfair, but I'm too old to change, Jim. I'm too old to change.
Well, I think also it's, you're taking the majority and you're asking them to, and to me, it's almost reverse racism in a way, where you're basically saying that we have to change everything that we're doing to reduce qualifications, to hire differently, to hit our numbers, so to speak. To me, that's a blatant distrust of, in this case, the female, because we're in effect saying, in this case with the Secret Service, we know you're not good enough, we know you're not tall enough to be on the front line, but we're going to put you there anyhow. And then we're going to watch you fail, right? So we watched that on Saturday, and everybody, whether you're a female, you're a male, you're a Democrat, you're a Republican, we saw failure on Saturday.
We did.
And is that fair to that individual? That person could be going through some severe, anxiety at this point.
Well, look at the public.
Is that fair to her?
No, look what they're doing. They have her cowering. The video on her, she's been singled out. She could be a very good, dedicated, wonderful person.
Right.
But because of the policies, which are absurd and ridiculous on every level, are going to probably end up destroying her career.
Correct.
Right? And that's true across the board. It really is.
And she could have been she may be or could be the best desk analytical agent in the world. She may have identified that shooter a week ago before that person showed up that day. But we don't know, because we have to fit a narrative and place somebody who may not be competent into a situation where now, to your point, their career's wrecked.
Yeah.
And when in reality, we could have said, yeah, we'll hire a female, or we're going to hire this position. And just so happens that this female is the best at this position, but it's not going to be protecting the president. It's going to be someplace else within the organization.
Unfortunately, that's the way it works. Or at least I thought it did. Now we're in a situation where, I think it's a reverse. It's all kinds of terrible things. I see nothing good coming of it. And I think anytime you defy reality and you can get people to accept untruths, unscientific truth as fact, my goodness, we'll be willing to accept anything, Jim.
Yeah.
Don't you think? You know what, though? I feel bad here. I do. I feel like I don't want to pick on her. I don't want to pick on anybody. And we brought up the Trump shooting, right? And with all the rhetoric that led up to that, and do you think we can at some point get together? Because I know there are Democrats who are disappointed that he wasn't taken out. And I know there are a lot of Republicans that are very angry and are going to blame Democrats for it. And I've had a sense for a long time the country isn't, pulling together like we did after 9/11, for instance.
Yeah, I don't, who knows? I think, obviously it's the negative people are amplified, more so than the positive. But for me, look at the people in that audience that day. Obviously one individual was killed. A few more were injured. And that ER doctor who was there, to watch Trump, tried to come to the rescue and save that person's life. The father was killed by protecting his daughter and his wife, the husband rather. And there was a lot of good, right? I believe, and the thing that I think unites us all, when the chips truly are down, I truly believe that 99% of us in this country are going to help somebody else out. And we saw that on Saturday. And I don't care. I think most of us, and I have some, people that don't like Trump, they call them never Trumpers. I talked to them, on Sunday and Monday, and they were horrified, about what happened. So I think, all of us, have this sense of humanity. I believe we are more united than we are divided. We talk a lot about, tea and, everybody wants to have good health and everything else. But I think in this case, after this weekend, hopefully it'll last a little longer this time. And I think our leadership, our politicians have to lead us, and, and they need to tone it down. I do think the American people want it. And I do think that we have more in common than we do not in common.
I think so. And I see it quite frequently in everyday life. Car accidents, someone loses a wallet, whatever. No one asks, are you a Democrat or Republican? They tend to want to help out, and that's a good thing. And one of the best ways to do that, Jim, I think, is to order some of your wonderful tea. I'm serious. It's delicious. I know that. I'm very disappointed we don't have any today because I was quite parched coming in.
Yeah, well.
But I'm serious. Just to sit down and visit, and whether it's tea or something else, goes a long way.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't talk anymore.
Yeah, so my suggestion would be to go on our site and buy some detox tea. And by the way, if you buy 250-gram bag, you'll get 100-gram free.
Ooh.
And if you buy a 500-gram bag, you'll get 250 grams free. And that's our July special. And reach out to somebody who you disagree with.
Maybe buy a pack of tea for them.
Have a cup of tea, throw a little detox in there with some tequila if you want to make a drink, and just have a conversation.
Everybody will be friends after that. I guarantee you. And as always, it's always a pleasure to get together with you, Jim. I didn't know you hated sea turtles the way you... No, I'm kidding. No, I thought that was a fabulous point, and all these hot takes. I really do appreciate being part of it. And for those of you who listen, we'll be back again. And we thank you for listening.
Yeah, thanks. Watch us on YouTube, and we'll be in most of the social media platforms soon, and we'll load it up on our website as well. So thanks again, Bill.
Hey, thank you, Jim.
Thanks for joining us on Hot Takes 50 Cups. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to visit our website at 50cupstea.com for more great content and delicious organic teas, and listen and watch us on all the leading platforms. Stay connected with us on Instagram at 50cupstea, YouTube, and TikTok. And don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends. Until next time, keep sipping and stay united.